Good evening, candidates and audience members. Thank you for attending the League of Women Voters of Santa Fe County's Candidate Forum for the New Mexico State House Representative, District 50. I'm Debbie Helper, and I'll be the moderator. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Santa Fe County, I want to express our gratitude to the Santa Fe New Mexican for broadcasting our candidate forums this year as a service to the community. Let me introduce Bill Church, the editor of the Santa Fe New Mexican. Bill?
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you all for being here. Wonderful to see a standing room only crowd. Santa Fe New Mexican is 175 years old, and it is proud to have had a long-standing relationship with the League of Women Voters of Santa Fe County. And I promised that I wouldn't spend a lot of time here because in an hour and 20 minutes, I plan on being in my pajamas watching the live stream, not so live, of this candidate forum. So Debbie, I'm just going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Bill. The League is committed to civil discourse. The candidates have agreed to follow the League protocols for candidate forums, including respecting the time limits for their responses, not engaging in crosstalk, and being mutually respectful, courteous, constructive, and orderly even when they disagree. The questions we ask will be selected by our screening panel to focus on the issues that seem to generate the most interest. Questions that are similar will be consolidated, and questions that are directed to one candidate or contain personal attack will be eliminated. Due to time constraints, not all questions can be asked. We invite you to stay after the forum to talk to the candidates. If you haven't already submitted your questions, you can email them to lwvsfc@gmail.com now or at any time during the forum. For those of you who are attending in person, write your questions on the 3x5 note cards that are being distributed. Submit one question per card and write legibly. Hold the card up when finished, and one of our runners can pick it up. We have a timekeeper, Maggie LaRochelle, sitting in front. When a candidate has 15 or 30 seconds left, depending upon minutes assigned to the question, she will hold up a yellow warning sign. And when your time is up, she will hold up the red stop sign. At that point, we ask that you wind up your response immediately. If not, I will interrupt out of fairness to all. In the interest of time, please save your applause until the end of the forum. Before I introduce the candidates, I want to review the responsibility of the New Mexico State Representative, District 50. The representative represents a district in New Mexico House of Representatives, which has 70 members. In odd-numbered years, the legislature meets for 60 days. In even-numbered years, it meets for 30 days. The governor may call for special sessions. Representatives sponsor and vote on, quote, reasonable and appropriate laws, end quote. They represent the constituents of their districts and serve on legislative committees. Positions are unpaid except for per diem expenses. The representative is elected for a 2-year term. We will begin with 2-minute opening statements by the candidates and conclude with 1-minute closing statements. And first, we will hear from candidate Matthew McQueen.
Thank you very much. So I'm Matthew McQueen. First off, I'd like to thank the League for putting this together. I'd like to thank the New Mexican. I didn't know this was happening, the webcast. I think that's great. And thank you all for coming out tonight. I appreciate it. So I'm the current representative for House District 50. And for the past 10 years, it's been my honor to represent you in the New Mexico legislature. District 50 has changed. After redistricting, after the last census, the district used to include parts of 4 counties. Okay, that's not fair. After redistricting, 3 of those counties were removed. So Torrance, Valencia, and Bernalillo County were all taken out of the district. The district used to go down to Rio Communities, which is south of Berlin, and included places like Mountain Air. So it was a big sprawling district. So, was it 2 minutes or 1 minute? Have I really burned through 2 minutes?
No, that was warning.
Okay.
That's the warning.
That's my 30-second warning. Okay, well, so I took too long. I'm Matthew McQueen. I-
Yes, yes.
So
I-
add on 10 seconds.
I live down the road in Galisteo with my family. I'm happy to be here. I'm running for re-election. There's more work to be done. I'd like to go back and continue my efforts. Thank you very much.
Candidate Brennen?
Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Brennen, and thank you for everybody for coming here. It's wonderful to see this many people here at one time, because that shows an interest in the process of this country, and that's real important to me. A little bit about myself. I'm a retired Naval Chief Petty Officer. I spent 20 years as a gas turbine system electrician, and I retired in 2000. After that, I started working for a GE company, working on gas turbine engines for the peaker plants. You may remember when California was going through all those blackouts, they started putting a lot of peaker plants in. I was one of those people out there in the front line putting those new plants in. And then I went on to work on the wind turbines. In 2005, I was elevated to the position of resource manager for the wind turbine division, where at any one time I had up to 230 wind turbine technicians reporting to me, working throughout the country and abroad. My family moved out here to New Mexico in 1975. We moved to Rio Rancho. I'm a graduate of Cibola High School. When I joined the Navy, I got to see a lot of this country, got to see a lot of our world, and all the differences that there are out there. And I learned to deal with all those type of different people and how to work with them. And when I was in the Navy, once again, having to work with so many different people from so many different cultures, it just became second nature for me. And I bring that same attitude towards for working for the House. And I am also right now, I am the sitting mayor of Edgewood, New Mexico, and a commissioner for Edgewood. For those of you who don't know, Edgewood is a commissioner manager, so the mayor is a member of the commission. Thank you once again, everybody, for being here, and let's have a good time.
Okay, thank you. First question, you'll have two minutes for these questions unless I tell you otherwise, okay? How have your prior experience in education prepared you for this position? We'll start with candidate McQueen.
So I have a lot of fancy education. I went to college back east. I went to law school, Wallen Law School. I got a master's of science in natural resources policy. Natural resources has always been my passion. And then when I moved to New Mexico, I got a business degree at the University of New Mexico. Of all that, a lot of it's sort of good background. The education I use the most is the law degree. You know, they call us lawmakers, and I think that's very real. So I sit on the Judiciary Committee. I read bills very closely. We have what's called the Legislative Counsel Service, which drafts a lot of our bills. I'm probably much more active than a lot of legislators in terms of interacting with the Counsel Service to get a bill to say what I want it to say. And I think I have those skills. And that's, you know, in addition to running a business, being a father, you know, having kids in public schools, you know, it's that law degree that I really bring to the legislature.
Okay. Candidate Brennen?
Well, as I said, I'm retired Navy, and I went through a lot of training for the Navy. I also was part of the leadership program, and I also, when I was in the Navy, became a senior enlisted engineering instructor, which is a very unique position to have. I taught gas turbine engineering when I was at Great Lakes for 2 tours. And then when I started working for GE on the wind turbines, I started to went through their schools to learn how to do the wind turbines, also how to deal with those gas turbines, and always furthering my education within the company. That's one of the reasons why they elevated me to a manager, because I had all that knowledge and I had the people skills to work with people and get a job done. And now that I've been in the commission now for almost 3 years, and the mayor since September, I've started learning a lot more about government than I ever realized before, and I think that is extremely valuable. One thing I've learned about government, though, government works very slow, and people have to have patience when dealing with government. I want to go ahead and make sure that I can communicate with everybody to make sure that everybody's voices are heard and understood. And those are the things that I learned as being in the commission. Thank you.
Next question is to start with candidate Brennen. What are the big issues in District 50?
One of the biggest issues in the district is water. We don't have much of it. Out in Edgewood, we're trying real hard to get a 40-year water plan together. Every community needs to be able to do that. You've got to be able to plan for your future. You've got to be able to understand where your water is going to be coming from. And how you're going to get it to the people. There are a lot of wells out there in the area, and there are a lot of it's privately owned and some of it's corporate owned. We need to continue to search out more ways to get water to the people. Some of the other issues right now in District 50, and this is especially down in Edgewood, is the roads. Road conditions throughout New Mexico can be quite harrowing. Some of the roads you go down, they just redo them. It still rattles your car apart, and we do have that problem down in Edgewood. So those right there we need to be taken care of. Other issues is going to be for education. For a state that has so much money and so many PhDs living within the state, you think our state would have a better education system. But with our state being ranked 50th out of all 50 states, and if you want to go ahead and include Puerto Rico and District of Columbia, we are 52nd. New Mexicans deserve better than that. They need a better education system. And one of the things in education we really need to be focusing down on is mathematics. Thank you.
So I think the biggest issues facing our state are also issues facing our district. And the two biggest, I would say, are education and economic development. So education is the biggest chunk of our budget. It's close to half the budget. And you know, statewide, we continue to struggle. I think we have very good school districts in District 50. I think the Santa Fe Public School District is very well run. I think good things are happening at Moriarty Edgewood School District. There's a little bit, there's an elementary school down in Placitas as well. So education is always a priority. We're always trying to improve our outcomes. And we've taken significant strides, right? So we substantially increased our teacher pay. So our teacher pay is now competitive with surrounding states. And that's a big deal in terms of attracting teachers. We funded early childhood education. And my kids are 8 and 10, and they had the opportunity to go to Montessori school before they went to public school. And that really helps. It gets the kids ready to be in a classroom to learn. And that's something we can do with early childhood education. And then economic development. You know, New Mexico has a lot of money, that's true. We're getting income from oil and gas, that's true. But we're still fundamentally a poor state. You know, our populace is poor. We need good jobs, we need good opportunities. We need good opportunities if we want our kids to stay here when they graduate. So to me, economic development and education are always sort of the two priorities at the state. And those two go hand in hand. You know, they influence each other. And I'll continue to focus on both of those.
Okay, thank you. Third question. This will start with candidate McQueen. Are law enforcement and the courts doing enough to enforce existing laws and to discourage crime in our state?
That's a really interesting question because public safety has been a big issue lately. There's a lot of crime in some of our cities, probably less so in District 50. We had a special session. The governor called a special session to address crime and wanted us to pass a bunch of bills that weren't ready. You know, they weren't constitutional. They weren't going to be effective. They weren't paired with really important mental health care, behavioral health care, drug addiction treatment, things like that. So that's something that we're working on. And then recently some studies came out that said the people that are most concerned about crime are the people that live in the big cities, right? Especially Albuquerque. And as one of my colleagues pointed out, the laws we have in Albuquerque are the same as the laws we have in Las Cruces, are the same as the laws we have in Hobbs, are the same as the laws we have in Roy. You know, the laws apply statewide. And we have examples, unfortunately, of prosecutors not prosecuting, either through, you know, plea bargaining down, which is, you know, part of the process, or just, you know, slap on the wrist or release. And there have been a couple high-profile crimes recently, run-ins with the law. So I definitely think there's an argument to be made that we should be doing a better job enforcing the laws that are already on the books. I personally think that, you know, no matter how tough on crime we are, if we don't address the underlying causes of crime, poverty and addiction and, you know, education and economic development go into that too, we will never solve the public safety issue. All those things need to be addressed at the same time.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Candidate Brennen, oh, yes. Are law enforcement and the courts doing enough to enforce existing laws and discourage crime in our state? 2 minutes.
We have a lot of dedicated law enforcement officers in the state, and they work very hard, and they work a very dangerous job. And sometimes I think they go unappreciated. They do need to have more teeth within the laws to help them out, and that goes along with the courts. As it's already been said, that too many slip through the cracks or get released early, or they just put it down to a lesser crime or even dismiss it altogether. The problem is when you start doing stuff like that, they're more emboldened to go ahead and recommit crimes. So you've got to make sure you get them when they're starting out. When they're starting out with crime, you hit them hard early, then chances are they're going to stop and change their ways. The other thing that we have, it's going to help there is by improving the education and the available of good jobs out there for people to get. You're going to help, that'll have a trickle-down effect to also help reducing crime. Education is very, very important. And when you have an educated populace, you're going to have less crime. You're going to find out that a lot of cases, a lot of issues within New Mexico are all interrelated with each other. They all tie into each other. And that is the problem that we have. We need to not just work on focus in one particular area. We need to expand out and hit all areas at all times and just keep on working on it. There's a lot of good people in this state, all right? And they want to have a safe place to live, and I think we can do that. Thank you.
Candidate Brennen, you'll start with this question. What legislation would you endorse to reduce gun violence in New Mexico?
Yeah, that's a good question. When you start talking about gun violence and people say we have a gun violence problem in the state, it's not necessarily a gun violence problem. It is a violence problem. Not just guns, but just, you know, any weapon at all, a baseball bat, a knife, a fist fight. This state has started with the younger generation, is starting to develop a culture of violent behavior. And this is being, you know, further advanced as they get older, and it's not being stopped. We need to start working with our younger people to get that culture of violence out of them. Because once you can get rid of that culture of violence, most of those other problems are going to start becoming reduced. The other thing is also having them to respect life. When you see kids walking through a shopping mall just willy-nilly firing a handgun off, they don't have any respect for life. And chances are you're going to find out they don't have respect for their own life. And that's a problem. And we've got to start working with those young people. We've got to go and change the mindset. If we do not, we are going to continue down a path of no return. So once again, it's not necessarily a gun violence issue. It is a violence issue. And we've got to stop that. We've got to stop the continuing process from parents to children, and when those children get older, to their children. If you can stop the cycle, we can solve a lot of our problems. Thank you.
Candidate McQueen.
So the thing about the prevalence of guns in our society is that guns turn petty disagreements into potentially lethal disagreements. And it happens over and over again. I have a record in the legislature of supporting reasonable gun safety legislation. I've supported the red flag law that has a process to temporarily take guns away from people who are a threat to themselves or to others. I supported the bill to end open carry in voting places. You know, people were parading around voting places, and it's an intimidation tactic, and that shouldn't happen. You should feel safe when you go vote. I would definitely support raising the age to buy assault weapons. I would support restrictions on assault weapons. Assault weapons are weapons of war, and they don't belong on our streets. And I think there are ways that we can restrict the prevalence of them, because they're pretty much everywhere right now. And of course, you know, thorough background checks, I've supported that in the past as well. There are things we can do to address specifically gun violence, because the gun violence is so much more lethal than anything else.
Okay, thank you. So you'll start with the next question. What are the next steps needed to improve student outcomes in New Mexico?
I've already talked about a couple steps which I think are really important, and that's teacher pay and early childhood education. And of course, you know, early childhood education, expanding the funding and access to that, that's something that's going to pay off over the long run, right? We're not going to see an immediate return on high school graduation rates for kids who are, you know, 3 to 5. That's going to take a few years to go through the system. I think our public teachers do a great job. I always went to public schools. My kids go to public schools. I've always known teachers to be caring, dedicated people, and paying them a fair rate so we can keep them and so we can recruit them. That's going to pay dividends as well. We're also taking steps to make higher education affordable or free for New Mexicans. You should be able to go to a community college. You should be able to go to UNM or New Mexico State and continue your education. And those are things, you know, we're continuing to work on and to fund, and that will be a benefit for everyone in New Mexico. So, you know, there's a lot we already have done, and I believe that will pay off over time. The thing that is hardest to get at in terms of education is involving parents. Parents are a huge influence when it comes to education. I've heard over and over again, there's, you know, a story, different families that had, you know, 5 children. Parents never went to college. Each kid is a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. And the common thread in all of those stories is that when the kids got home from school, the parents sat them down at the kitchen table and did their homework with them. You know, that culture of education is something that we need to foster, and that's hard for the legislature to do, but it's critically important.
Kenneth Brennen?
The one thing on education is having the kids interested in going to school. And when I just recently had a tour of the Edgewood Middle School with the superintendent, and we were walking around, he was explaining a lot of his theories and what they've been doing. And a lot of it did boil down to discipline, but the other thing is to keeping the students engaged, keeping them constantly being interested and constantly challenging them with more questions. Not all kids are going to learn the same way. You have to have multiple ways to teach. What works for this person is not going to work for that person, or may not work for that person. So you have to have your teachers educated to the point to where they can understand how to teach multiple ways. Everybody here can probably remember when the so-called new math came in. And a lot of kids had a lot of trouble with that. I mean, that was back when I was in school, when new math was coming in. I knew I did math the old way. My wife did math the old way. She did her homework with doing the old math way with her dad. She got a failing grade on the homework, even though the answers were right, because she didn't use the new math process. Well, she didn't understand the new math process, but she understood math and was able to get it get the answers right and get to the right way. When you go ahead and you say, well, no, because you didn't do this particular way, you fail, you just went and turned that person off. You need to have these students turned on. They need to be excited about learning. And that's what it gets down to, making sure that each teacher is able to find multiple ways to reach those students. Because once you reach them, you get to their minds and you educate them, and they're going to be happier about themselves, and they're going to be excited about learning.
Thank you. So we're going to do a couple of quick questions. These will be 1 minute. The first is for candidate Brennen to start. Do you support open primaries?
In a way I do. I call it a semi-open primary. And the way I look at it is when we go into the primaries, you have your two major parties, Republicans and Democrats. So Republicans are going to vote in the Republican primary, Democrats vote in the Democrat primary. Now you have the folks in the middle. Those who are independent, not aligned, smaller third party. If they don't have a third party candidate that's running, they should be given the option to whether they can vote in the Republican primary or the Democrat primary, one or the other, and have that option so that they are still part of the primary process.
Kenneth, McQueen.
So we effectively already have that. So we actually have 3 major parties. The Libertarians are still a major party in New Mexico. If you're not registered with a major party, you can show up on primary day and you fill out a form, you register, and you can vote in any primary you want. So we already have that. Going beyond that, frankly, I'm concerned about that. And I would note in 2018, and this could be true in any given year for either the Republicans or Democrats, but in 2018, not a single statewide Republican race was contested. Not one. And so if you have a system where you have a bunch of conservative voters who would never vote for a Democrat anyway, able to vote in the primary, there's going to be strategic voting in that primary. And that concerns me. I think the system we have now is working well. We are rated as the best elections in the nation, literally, the best run elections. We should stick with that.
Another quick lightning round, 1 minute. To address the issue of gerrymandering, do you support an independent redistricting commission? Candidate McQueen first.
Went through redistricting, and I'll tell you, it's interesting. I would say the House did it right, and so I don't see any of my Senate colleagues in the room. I'll tell you, I don't think they did it right. So there was a Citizens Redistricting Committee. They proposed a map. The House of Representatives adopted the map with some minor modifications. A couple things here and there that local communities wanted. The biggest change was the tribal consensus map that we need districts for Native Americans. But other than that, we didn't touch it. The Senate didn't really do that, and they sort of did their own process. So we have a citizen redistricting committee. I think there's an appropriate role for the legislature in redistricting. We don't have gerrymandering in New Mexico. We got an A grade from Princeton. Again, I think our current system is working pretty well. I think the Senate could do a better job.
Kenneth Brennen.
Redistricting is a big thing because you're moving people around into where they're going to be voting, and there should be a group from each area to be able to go ahead and be part of the decision making of that redistricting on where they're going to end up. And right now, I don't see that happening as much. So there should be an independent committee of the citizenry, all right, average everyday people, to get their opinions, because a lot of times the average everyday person's opinion seems to get ignored.
Thank you. So, Candidate Brennen, you'll start with this question, and this will be a 2-minute question. What action should the legislature take to address and resolve the issues of racial and income inequality?
When it comes to income, I've always gone on the fact of what you do, your merit on how well you do it should be the determining factor on what your pay is going to be. When I was a manager for the wind turbine division, that's the one thing I did, is I went and looked at how each individual person performed, and their pay was based on that. When everybody would start off, they were basically all starting off within the same pay, give or take a couple of dollars, depending upon the education that they had relevant to working with wind turbines. When you start going ahead and saying, well, we're going to go ahead and treat you different because of X, Y, and Z, you start causing a problem that you think you're trying to solve. So like I said before, people should be paid according to their abilities, their knowledge, and as they go through their jobs, the merit that they put into that job. If you get a person that's doing astronomically well, then that person should be compensated more than the other people. That has nothing to do with what they look like, how they talk, who they pray to. It's all about how they do the job. And if you don't do it that way, then other people are going to say, well, shoot, why should I even, bother working so hard if it's not going to mean anything? Thank you.
First off, I'd say, I'm proud to serve in a House caucus that is racially diverse and is majority female. And the members of the caucus bring that diversity to the legislature, and I really appreciate my colleagues. Income inequality is something that I think is a huge problem for the United States at large. We have unbelievably wealthy individuals, and then most of the rest of us, not so wealthy. I want policies that empower workers, that get more money to working class folks. That's why I've always supported unions, and that's why unions have always supported me. So unions, I think, are one of our best ways to empower workers and to sort of balance, level that playing field. I also think the wealthy should pay their fair share. I believe in a progressive tax code. We see at the national level an emphasis on giving big tax breaks to the wealthiest among us, and I think that's a mistake. Here in New Mexico, we had a proposal a couple of years ago to increase the working families tax credit. So essentially raise the level under which lower income people wouldn't have to pay taxes. And we were gonna pay for that by an increase in the capital gains tax. Every single Republican voted against that. That's the trade-off I'm willing to make.
Question is for you as to start, and it's 2 minutes. How do you propose to handle the affordable housing situation?
Is this a 2-minute question?
2.
So I think owning your own home, for those that want to, is incredibly beneficial in terms of an investment, in terms of stability, in terms of family, in terms of safety and security. I think home ownership is an incredibly beneficial thing, and we should make that easier, and we should make that easier by having more supply. It's interesting, you look at Edgewood. Edgewood's a place where they should be building a lot of houses. It's in striking distance to Albuquerque. You could commute to Santa Fe. You could work from home. We have places to build houses. We need to make it easier to build houses. Part of this is there's some bureaucracy involved at the county level. Partly we don't have enough inspectors at CID, Construction Industries, or at the county level. We need to facilitate the construction of new housing stock so we can provide housing opportunities for those that want them.
Thank you.
So housing is expensive, and if anybody has gone out to go in price houses, they can see how much, what they're costing. For myself, the house that I'm living in now, if I had to buy it today, I couldn't afford it, can't pay for it. What we do need to do though is making it more available to the people to be able to go ahead and get those home loans. providing that they can go ahead and demonstrate their ability to pay off. Because the last thing we want is another crash like we had, was in 2008, when the housing market really just, dropped out of the sky. A big thing is also to go ahead and start building housing that will incorporate multiple families, like, no, not condos, but townhomes or small apartment buildings. But you don't want big sprawling apartment houses, because a lot of people don't want that in their neighborhood. And I can understand that. You see a big, huge apartment building and they're not always very attractive. But you've got to have those multiple levels of type of housing available. One of the things that we're starting to look at doing in Edgewood is something called workforce housing. And they're starting to look at this and how to go ahead and encourage builders to build these multiple units that are, more affordable for people who are just starting out. And those are the ones that really are having a hard time. I'm the board member on the NCRTD. If you guys ever see the blue bus, that's us. And we're doing exactly that with the NCRTD. We're building workforce housing. The first area we're going to have is going to be able to take in 5 different families. Now, those are going to be families that are going to be working for the NCRTD, but it's going to be affordable housing for where they can get into it and they can start working and be able to basically afford to live.
Another 2-minute question, starting with candidate Brennen. Please express your views on a woman's right to choose.
That's one of the most touchy subjects that are out there. And no matter who you talk to, you gotta get a different opinion. So you start talking about the right to choose. The choices were already made, and now people start talking about the right to choose once there is a baby involved. In this state, an abortion is legal all the way up until birth. At the 9th month, the baby can be aborted. People say, well, that's not true. You go ahead and you look at the legislation, it is in there. If it wasn't so, they would change the legislation. And that's where I fall into, is you have around about the 22nd week, that baby becomes viable. That baby has a brain, that baby has a heartbeat, that baby has blood circulating through its veins. That baby also has a very unique DNA. And if you were to go and test that DNA comes up as human. It doesn't come up as fetus. When you go ahead and it comes up as human. Now there are always exceptions. There's going to be the health of the mother. The mother's life is at risk. There's a choice that needs to be made there. Or the baby itself, the baby, he or she is not developing properly and is not going to make it to full term, or right after birth is not going to survive. So there's not a single one answer that's going to fit all of it, but you can't have the extremes. Now, I know there are some people that are on the Republican Party that say no abortion whatsoever. That's the extreme on the other end. And that's not right either.
Candidate McQueen?
So I trust women to make the decision that's right for them. And that's sort of the end of it for me. What I will not do is support government harassing and targeting women. And what you need to know is that's what's happened in Edgewood. So Edgewood passed a local abortion ban. It is unconstitutional on multiple levels. It provides that you can sue your neighbor. They don't even have to be your neighbor. You can sue anyone in the community for receiving abortion medication in the mail. Minimum fine of $10,000 plus attorney's fees. This was passed by the town commission with Commissioner Brennen voting in favor. I believe it'll be stopped by the state Supreme Court. In the meantime, it was stopped by the citizens of Edgewood, who did a recall petition to put it to a vote. Since it was passed by the town commission, so far they have failed 3 times to successfully submit the paperwork. This is an abuse of power. It's a political stunt. And I, as a state legislator, need local government that I can work with who's working on local issues. And abortion is not a local issue that the town of Edgewood gets to decide.
Next question, we'll start with candidate McQueen, 2 minutes. Would you support or oppose a paid family and medical leave program that would require most employees and employers to pay into a state-run fund? Why and why not?
So I have supported the paid family medical leave legislation. It would, just to be clear, it would cover all employees. And I think that's a good thing. It actually doesn't cover most employers. There's a carve out for employers with fewer than 5 employees, which is actually most of the employers. So we have a balance there that we have a way to provide this benefit to employees and not burden small employers, and I think that's a good thing. It died, I think it lost by a vote last year in the House after passing the Senate. I expect it to come back. I will support it again.
Candidate Brennen?
Medical care for employees is an important thing, and they need to be able to have that option to have that and be able to have sick time. A lot of small companies, though, they're running on a very thin margin. And when you start forcing that type of legislation onto them, that margin just goes away, and they can't afford to stay in business. So what happens? They go out of business, and those people that are working there no longer have a job. We need to have a balance on this to where the employers can continue to work and have the people working for them and options available for the employees. But to go ahead and force all businesses to go ahead and have the paid paid sick leave is going to definitely put a strain on those businesses. We need to be able to find a middle ground on this, because right now I don't see it working on either way. I mean, people need to be able to take time off of being sick, but a lot of businesses cannot afford to go ahead and pay that. And when this came up towards the legislature, I mean, that was the biggest thing coming out of the business community in New Mexico, is the cost that was going to be on them, and what it's going to do to their business, and they may not be able to stay in business. People need to be working. People need to be earning a paycheck. We don't need to be putting companies and these small businesses into a situation to where they can't operate anymore and people don't have any more jobs.
Thank you. This question starts with you, candidate Brennen. What can the state do to encourage greater use of solar energy?
On that solar energy, that's akin to what I was doing when I was working for GE, because I worked on the wind turbine industry. Solar energy is great. I have a 10 kilowatt solar system on my house. It cost me an arm and a leg to put it in there, but I was able to get the money together, got a good loan, and got the system put in. Not everybody can do that. To do it on a massive scale, solar panels, depending upon what study you look at, when they're in large areas of land, they start to retain heat. And then that heat starts radiating back up, and that causes a problem. But the solar energy, like I said, it should be up to individuals if they want to have that for their own homes. As far as large-scale operations, it has issues. And the other problem, too, are the solar panels themselves and where they're being made. Not very many panels are made in the U.S. A lot of this is coming from China or Korea. So you're paying for somebody else's economy. But renewable energy does have a part in what we do, and it is important. But the thing is, it is not a cure-all. Like I said, I worked with the renewables industries, working with the wind turbines. I understand a lot what goes into them, and I understand a lot of the cost. And also understand that once they meet their lifespan, nobody really knows what to do with them yet. And that's a problem as well.
Candidate McQueen?
So I've always been a strong supporter of solar. I have solar on my house. I sponsored legislation that passed to provide an incentive for rooftop solar. I supported the Community Solar Act. I would love to see more public funding for solar on public buildings. And I'll tell you, schools, for example, love solar because solar reduces their cost for electricity and it doesn't undermine their funding. So they still get the same level of funding on a per student basis and they don't have to pay as much for solar. So that's something that they can just reinvest in their students. To expand solar, there are two things we need to do. One, we need to work on transmission. And transmission can be tough because you see these big interstate transmission lines and they're not always something you want nearby. We had the SunZia project, which has been going on for over 10 years. They've already spent over $1 billion and they're just now starting construction. And that is a project that crosses federal land, so it's subject to NEPA. We also had the Western Spirit Line, which is an intrastate line, which avoided all those things and could be done really quickly. But then also it didn't have the same level of public input. And that's a concern for me. And I think there needs to be a middle ground where you can build transmission quickly and efficiently, but also do necessary environmental, archaeological, visual assessments. The other thing we need to work on is grid modernization. We have energy coming from different sources now. Rooftop solar, battery storage, it's all flowing in and out, and we need to modernize our grid to make sure it can handle the changed energy environment.
Thank you. Okay, so to start with candidate McQueen, 2-minute question. Do you support or oppose the state treating and or reusing brackish and produced water? Why and why not? Or why not?
This was the governor's big proposal last year. She announced this effort, they're calling it the strategic water supply, in December. The session starts in January. They wanted $500 million to launch this, and they had no details. So I told the governor's office I would not support that until we had the feasibility study, until we knew how it was going to work, until we had the regulations in place that we knew it could work and be done safely. If we can find a way to reuse produced water or to use brackish water, which is like high salt content, that'd be great. You know, and I'm certainly, if we can use produced water and clean it up and use it to, for example, create green hydrogen, create hydrogen with solar power from dirty water and create a emission-free energy source, that's great. But we gotta prove we can do it. And so far, there's no proof of that. And so I remain skeptical. I chair the Interim Water and Natural Resources Committee. We had the governor's people come down and talk to us. There is a feasibility study. It's now online. I have not looked at it yet. I certainly will. There's much work to be done. The water should never be used for drinking water. It should never be used for agriculture, and it should never be put in our streams and rivers. And until we can ensure that those safeguards are in place, this isn't something I can support.
Candidate Brennen?
Yeah, just recently in Santa Fe, they were taking testimony on this exact subject, and I was there and gave testimony. Water being a very important commodity within the state. I mean, it is one of probably our most important resource for the people. And clean water is extremely important. Brackish water, which is that water it's going to usually going to find it about 1,000 feet deep. At one time, this entire area was an ocean, and a lot of that water is down there and can be brought up. Brackish water is akin to seawater. And being in the Navy, when you're out at sea, you have to turn seawater into fresh water, and we were very good at it. The technology for turning the brackish water into fresh, good, even, capable for drinking, the technology does exist. The Navy has been doing it for many, many, many years. Now, we're talking on a much larger, higher scale, so the technology is going to have to be modified to work with it. Produced water, now that is a little bit different. Produced water has a little more nasties in it. That is water that should definitely never be used for anything other than non-potable use or reused within the oil and gas industry's processes. But once again, water can be cleaned. And the technology is improving in getting there to be able to take this produced water and to clean it. But what has to be done is you have to have two sides. You have to have the government side and you have to have the corporate side. And then you also need to have civilian involvement to make sure the process they're using and the water that they're cleaning up meets those standards so it can be used. The science is there. The science is getting better at it. And we need to follow the science.
So we have one question left. It'll be a 1-minute question. We're approaching the end of this. For candidate Brennen to start. Electric vehicles use the roads but do not contribute to the road tax. Would you support a license fee or mileage assessment on electric vehicles to go into the road fund?
There needs to be a way for an electric vehicle driver to be able to pay their fair share on the tax. Because when you go and fill up your gas or your diesel vehicle, you're paying that tax, which is already on the fuel. Now, a tax could be applied to when you go ahead and use a charging station to go and charge your vehicle up. But a lot of people are going to be charging their vehicles at home. How are you going to capture that? And they should be paying their fair tax on, because those electric vehicles tend to be heavier than the average vehicle the same size because of those batteries, and they're going to be putting more wear and tear on the roads. Exactly how to recoup or how to capture that money, I don't know yet. All right, I haven't seen enough. I haven't read enough on the different ways to be able to get tax money out of that to go ahead and get the electric vehicles paying their fair share. But I am in full support of working on ways to be able to make that happen.
Candidate McQueen?
So right now, electric vehicles make up a tiny percentage of our civilian fleet. So it's not a big deal right now, but it will become a bigger deal. I mean, I think that's fair. I think we're transitioning to electric vehicles. And since we repair our roads with a gas tax, that's a long-term issue that we're going to have to address. So electric vehicles do pay a registration fee. There have been proposals to increase that. And you could certainly tailor the registration fee to the weight of the vehicle. Because the latest, sort of resistance to electric vehicles has been, they're heavier and they're harder on the roads. Well, a Tesla Model 3 is 1,000 pounds lighter than F-150. Okay, so they are heavier, but we have some really big vehicles out there. You could charge a registration fee for every vehicle based on its weight. That would be a reasonable approach.
Thank you. So we'll now move to the candidates' 1-minute closing statements in reverse order from their opening statements. So Mr. Brennen, you want to go ahead and start?
Well, I appreciate everybody staying through here, and it's starting to get a little warm for some. And thank you for staying with it, not running for the door. I decided to get into this race because, one, I care about New Mexico. All right, like I said, my family moved out here in '75. And I want to see New Mexico thrive. We have a lot of great people in this state, but they're not getting the service that they deserve. And I think that's a dysfunction that we have. I want to work for the people. I want to listen to everybody. And my phone is always open. I will always take phone calls. And once again, thank you for coming here. And please, no matter who you vote for, make sure you get out there and vote.
Mr. McQueen? What? Oh. Mr. McQueen?
So being in the legislature is a lot of hard work, and we don't get paid. I would admit to being a politician, right? I've run for office. I've been elected to office. I'm serving in office. That pretty much makes me a politician. But I don't think I'm a natural politician. I just want to do the work. I just want to get into session and work on the bills and try to solve problems for New Mexico. And I think I'm pretty good at it. So that's why I keep doing it. I'm in my 10th year now. I've got bills I am refining and getting ready bills I've run before and new bills. I'm looking forward to the 60-day session because the 60-day session is where we get most of our work done. I would like to keep doing that. So I would ask for your support to send me back for another 2 years because there's more work to be done.
So, thank you. That concludes this evening's New Mexico Representative District 50 Candidate Forum. I want to thank Bill Church, editor, and Patrick Dorsey, publisher of the Santa Fe New Mexican, and Henry Lopez of Lopez Integrated Technologies for broadcasting the forum. It will be available for future streaming on the New Mexican's website, santafenewmexican.com, and on our website, lwvsfc.org. I also want to thank Julia Kelso, Library Director of the Vista Grande Public Library, for donating the use of the library's meeting room for this forum. For more information on election and the candidates, read the League's voter guide. It'll be available at lwvsfc.org and at vote411.org. Not available quite yet, but soon. We want to remind you that if your question was not asked, you are welcome to stay after the forum to talk to the candidates. For those of you who are watching online, if you have questions for the candidates, go to vote411.org for the candidates' contact information. As a reminder, there will be a candidate forum for U.S. Representative District 3 to be held on Monday, October 7th, 5:30 to 6:30 at Santa Fe Preparatory School. For more information, go to our website. Be sure to make your voice heard in this election by voting early or absentee or at the polls on November 5th. Please join me in thanking the candidates for their participation. Great job.